Nehemiah manages to unify and motivate his people to accomplish something big for God. Now let's come back to the wall image for just a moment, because in our day and age, it is in the current cultural discourse, walls have a really bad reputation. If you're building a wall, you're seen as intolerant, unloving, or bigoted. And yes, walls can be used inappropriately. But walls also serve a purpose. See, when I look around and I see everyone, and I look at people, at some level, most of us are building necessary walls in our lives. In some cases, building a wall might actually be the more loving thing to do. I'll give you an illustration. Let's imagine you got a bottle with poison in it. The poison is clear, so you can't tell if it's poison or if it's water or what exactly that liquid is unless you put the label on it. Right? The label is kind of like a wall. It protects. It keeps you from ingesting a dangerous chemical that could kill you. Now let me ask you, how loving would it be if you ripped that label off and somebody accidentally drank the poison? See, the label is there for their protection. Or if you got a problem with the wall image, let's come back to the door for a second. Doors are also a barrier. But how many of us would volunteer to rip the doors off of our house so anybody could just walk in? A door is there for protection from strangers, from animals, from weather, right? I got raccoons that like to go around my house. I don't want to have a raccoon in my kitchen when I wake up, or it's going to get cold pretty soon. With the door, you can open it, though. You can invite somebody in, or you could go out to meet somebody, or you could close it and lock it for protection. It takes discernment to know what to do. And again, the question is, when do you close the door? That's the tension I was raising before. And some of you are probably asking, well, you're right, but how do I know? How did Nehemiah know? What does it look like to put proper protection around your home? Let me give you 3 principles. The first principle I want to bring up is that of invitation. And this is an open door principle. You know, the Apostle Peter tells us in his letter, his first letter, 1 Peter 4:9 says, show hospitality to one another without grumbling. And the word hospitality there means a practical kindness paid especially to strangers through food and drink. The open door principle of invitation is an important New Testament ethic. We should be kind and open with our house as much as we can. But as Christians, we should be known for our love. So the question you might want to ask is, who might God be calling me to invite into my life? But that does require greater vulnerability. So another open door action we can take is that of extend. Extension is also an open door principle because we could walk through our door and go out to others outside our home where we're going to build relationships. Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 4:15, for it is all for your sake, so that as grace extends to more and more people, it may increase thanksgiving to the glory of God. Where's God calling you to extend his love? So those first 2 principles are an open door. We should ask as much as we can, how can we have open doors so that the gospel can go forward? But third, there is a time to restrict. This is the tension, right? There's a time to close the door on people, on ideas, on maybe entertainment that may cause destruction in your life. Yes, we are called to love people. But even Jesus himself said this, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. Did you hear what he said? Right? He says there's wolves in the world, and we have to be what? We have to be shrewd. It's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. Sometimes you have to close the door because wolves want to come in and eat you. And in the church, that means we got to protect against things like false doctrine. If you have kids, especially little kids, I think there's a time to close the door on certain relationships or media choices or ideas that might bring confusion. You have to spot the wolves by using discernment. There may be relationships in your own life where the doors need to close. And that doesn't mean it's forever. The good thing about doors is you can close them and you can reopen them. But if that relationship is dishonoring to God, if it's causing harm at some level, you may need to consider closing the door for your protection. So where in discernment may God be calling you to restrict? And in order to